I am ChosenArchitect, and this is All the Mods 9 to the Sky. Now, last episode, some work was done. We ended up getting all the hostile neural networks set up and the idea around how we're going to automate it. But today, we are going to be expanding on this because we have some mobs that we definitely need to capture that need to go into these machines. And I also have some ideas for how to sort of regulate the amount of items that come in, because unfortunately, I can't just shut this machine off. It doesn't take a redstone signal, and we are getting a ton of mob drops that are going to be coming in from these. So we need a way to handle those mob drops and handle overflow, so that way we don't end up with hundreds of thousands of mob drops inside of our storage, clogging it all up. Now today we're going to be taking on the Wither as well. That's one of the mobs that I definitely want inside these machines so we can start producing nether stars for us. But also wither skeleton skulls and blazes as well. We could get all in this one area. So let's first talk about how we're going to regulate / handle all of these items coming in and how we're going to prevent overflow within our applied energistic system. Now my idea behind this is to make myself a very special disk holder. And so we can go to extended AE and we have an extended drive. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the extended drive crafted up. Now, what this does, this essentially is a regular drive like this, except it has 10 more slots. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this, and with it also being purple like this, I'm going to make this one a very special one. So when I place this down, we'll notice that it has dual slots. And I'm gonna set this priority higher. So we're gonna set it to 10 for right now. We may have to adjust this later on, but 10, I'm gonna set it higher so that way in our system, when an item goes in, it's going to check if it can go in here first. And if it can, it will go in. If it cannot, it's gonna go somewhere else, depending on the priority. So what we can use is different size cells to sort of manipulate how we want to filter items. And that's where the cell workbench comes into play, because believe it or not, every single one of these storage cells can have upgrades in them. Now, what I want to do is I want to partition a very particular part of our storage cell for our shulker shells. Basically, we can use a cell workbench, and I believe in this particular version, it's a little bugged. You're supposed to be able to allocate multiple items into one, but unfortunately, you can't do that here. It just switches to one or the other. But really, I want to only send one item per cell anyways. So all you have to do is place the item in that you want to have going to the corresponding cell and add an overflow destruction card. And so what will happen is if the items go over the amount that this cell can hold, they will then be destroyed. And this is an important part to what we're going to be setting up, because inside of this disk drive here, if I put this in now with the higher priority and I pull out, for example, all of the shells that we currently have in here, and I put them back in, we should notice that this should start to fill up this particular disk. Notice now all of them are stored inside of this one disk. And if I was to add another item, for example, this ME drive, it will not be able to go into this disk drive because we have it partitioned to this one item, essentially acting like a locked functional storage drawer. And not only does it act like a functional storage drawer, but with that destruction card in it, that upgrade that's inside here, it will also act like a drawer that has a void upgrade in it. And so what should happen is this 1K drive now is taking 73 bytes of data to hold this 420 worth of shells. So essentially this one card holding one item, and it's on the lowest tier, which is the 1K, it should be able to store about 8,128 items. As far as mob drops go, I think that's going to be plenty, and we can set this up for every single one of our operations that we can have automated up here, giving me a little bit of peace of mind that our system doesn't become an overflowed mess. So now it's back to the nether for me, and there's a couple of mobs that I need to grab, one being the skeleton and the other being the blaze, because we might as well grab these guys. And we can toss them into our learner right here. And now, as I take them out, I can start to build up my data. We only need 6 of each mob. And this isn't going to take any time at all. It is so powerful with our effects, giving us like resistance and regeneration. Oh, it's just like nothing does any damage to us at this point. Oh, and while I'm here, I should probably also grab the magma cube. It was on the list as well. Right now, I want my focus to be on getting wither skeleton skulls because we're going to be spawning in the wither by hand at first and taking it out by hand to be able to get our card leveled up for the wither. but the goal is to ultimately have just reliquary drops really coming in. These are going to sort of work like compressed versions of mob drops, as they have a lot of crafting recipes associated with them. Now, not everything is going to be set to the reliquary versions, but most of the mobs will. Wither Skeleton is probably one of the exceptions, because I think I would much rather get coal from this guy, since the Wither Rib doesn't have a lot of uses. But now I should be ready to get this bad boy up and running. So as soon as I place this in here, from last episode, we already have this set up to receive the prediction matrix that allows us to start running. Each time I add something new though, I'm going to have to keep an eye out inside of here for the prediction, which will end up building up. And once I have that prediction, I just simply need to add that prediction into the Cinder module, or actually no, the Cinder MK2 module, which sends it over here into our loot fabricator. Now, if you missed how this whole setup works, I explained it all at the end of the last episode, so definitely be sure to check that out if you missed it. Now, I definitely want to get some cells partitioned with these generalized predictions as well. And I also want the overflow destructions on these too. Now, this is interesting. I didn't even think about this as an option whenever I was setting this up, but I guess because this has a shulker prediction in here, it automatically knows that it is a prediction. And so what it has done is it has automatically sent our other prediction without actually respecting the data that's on it. So I guess technically I could have them round robining between these two, and it wouldn't be a huge deal in that case. So filtering probably wouldn't be that important. It does, however, mean that for both of these machines, we'd have to make sure that for all 6, we have the predictions chosen on each of them, which to me feels like more of a hassle though. So I think instead what I might be missing is setting this to match MBT. So if I place this back inside, I'm going to see, without having the Wither one in the filter, if the Wither one is going to get stuck in here or if it's going to still try to send it. Yeah, I just think that it'd be better to have these specifically on the sides to not get things mixed up. Aha, and that has seemed to do the trick, which is exactly what I want. Okay, perfect. So that means we have to make sure that this Cinder module has that setting changed to match the MBT. Okay, perfect. And so I should be able to add this to the filter, or can I not? Is this only going to allow one prediction in? Because that wouldn't make any sense. That one can go in, and that one can go in. So can I not put both? That seems odd. So I guess the filter thinks that these predictions are the exact same item, and unfortunately that's not the case. So So now this leaves me with a couple of options, and I think I'm going to go with the lesser of the two evils and just distribute them between both of these and allow both of them to work. I'm just going to have to make sure that I go in here and select every prediction for everything that's going to exist. So for this, I'm just going to switch this to transfer out of the router, make sure it's in whitelist mode, and then I'm just going to put a prediction in here, and that should allow us to distribute that between here and also here. And so it should send and round robin to both of those locations, but we're just going to have to keep an eye on it. And as far as the pulling goes, this is actually pulling from that, so it shouldn't be a big deal. So we should see that leave the system and work its way over here or over here. So this is where I'm going to have to keep an eye on this. And as you can see, it's already tried to send to this one. So I'm going to have to make sure for both of these that I have them selected, as I mentioned. Now I set this all up this way because I wanted to use these as decorations and also be functional. So, I mean, yes, there are ways of doing things easier, but also jankier. And so I typically prefer to have things look nice. And so I will go the long way. I will go a long way just to make sure things look really, really clean. And that's just how my playstyle has always been with modded Minecraft. So now we're on to take on the Wither and also make a prediction from this Wither. And that is going to be a task of its own. So what I've needed to do was actually build up this tinted glass. Because we're going to be utilizing this tinted glass to farm the Wither. And now, as much as I would love to do this inside my base, I think it might be better if I do it, for example, on the end island. Just to make sure, you never know. What if the Wither, for example, escapes? Then it's just loose in your base. So it'd be best to build it out here. Now, something I will note about this, do not, and I repeat, do not use this glass and build out a 3x3 area like so. Like, do not try to put the Wither inside of a tiny box, because what will happen is the Wither will escape. 100% the Wither will escape, and you will be so caught off guard by it, you will be like, why, how did it even happen? When I say 3x3 cube, I mean something like this. You don't want to put the wither in a 3x3 box, as in 3x3x3. Now, you can put the wither in a 3x3 box if the roof is taller than 3 blocks. So I recommend building the roof at least 5 blocks tall. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We need a 5 interior space. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, because otherwise the wither can escape, and it's not a fun game whenever that happens. So now with this 3x3x5 space, we should be rather safe, so long as the wither doesn't decide to push through the sides, because this glass can be a little bit finicky, and so yeah, that is something we're going to have to keep in mind. But typically what I like to do is just build the wither up, for example, like this, place the sides in, like so, and then place in the skulls. And so this gives the wither a little bit of headroom, to say the least, which is kind of funny, but I would just want to make sure that it doesn't like pop through here and fly away. So all we have to do now is, well, turn the volume down and spawn in the wither by placing the skulls in. And then get ready to activate our data model by right-clicking on it, and then just stepping back. Now, if you want some extra protection, which I don't think this helps, you can claim the little area you're in. But there we go. Now the wither is contained inside of the box, and we should be able to go in here now and start chomping away at it. We will take damage, like, do not expect to not, but if you've set up a passive farm, you should have plenty of like regeneration and resistance totems. I 100% recommend using those. And yeah, just set yourself in here with the guy, because he's not going to really hurt you, especially if you have some nice diamond gear, and just start chomping away at him. And before you know it, this guy is going to be done. Now, I do need to put him inside of the data model, and there we go. So just keep on chomping away, and voila, we have now taken out the wither. And we're one step closer, but we have to kill this guy 5 more times. But honestly, this is not too bad. And if you didn't already have flight, well, now you can actually make flight. So as soon as you have yourself another star, you can go after the angel rings. And I believe there's a bunch of different types of angel rings. There's this one that requires power, which is fantastic. But also this one right here, which says it grants creative flight. So angel ring is switched to classic mode. So I guess just make this angel ring, and then you would have no requirement for anything. So you wouldn't need power or anything like that. So if you didn't get super lucky like I did, and you didn't happen to find that flight totem, well, this is the other way you could do it. And last but not least, there's the final wither needed to get this bad boy to basic. That way I can start throwing it into our hostile neural network system and, well, start upgrading this bad boy. Now, I don't know if I've mentioned this fully, but when we start getting into things like the wither, this data model is going to start costing a lot of power. And so thankfully we have a lot of power to be able to expend, but notice this one will end up costing, and I believe once it gets to max tier, it's going to stay that way all the way through its simulation cost, 2,560 FE per tick. This is more than our current applied energistic system and everything else combined. So yeah, that is a lot of power right here that's just going into one data model. But I think we have the ability to spare it. Yes, these barely even turn on. So now with the wither out of the way and nether stars being produced, we are one step away, in my opinion, from getting access to full ProjectE. And so the only thing preventing us from getting there is Botania. But I'm going to put a but there. There's actually a way we can get into it without actually even touching Botania right now. And don't get me wrong, it's very simple to set up a setup for Botania, a little bit of mana, and being able to produce the mana still needed for that. But what if I wanted to show you something way more fun? Now, dungeons in this game are just not here because we're in a skyblock. But what if I told you we can get that drop from a dungeon, and not only from a dungeon, but we could roll 10 dungeon rolls all in one go. And there's, believe it or not, a lot of items that can roll in dungeons. Specifically, underneath the dungeon chest section, all of these items are available from dungeon loot. And there's a lot of it. One specific thing that I think it's the only place you can get it is the overgrowth seeds. Now with Botania, oddly enough, there's actually a way to roll dungeon loot from mob drops. That's a whole other advanced topic in itself, and if you want to check that out, I've got videos on it on the channel. But today we're going to be using the Eternities mod, the gateway to eternity to be specific, and we're going to be using the gateway of the Overworldian Knights. This also sounds scary. There's a lot of stuff here, but something to note, whenever we do spawn these in, it's going to spawn a wave of a bunch of different mobs. First wave will be zombies, skeletons, spiders, and creepers. Next wave, while holding on shift and scroll wheeling, you can see there's even a witch on there. And we keep scrolling, another witch, and we keep scrolling, another witch. Now, the modifiers on this are going to get a little bit ridiculous as we start to go on, but notice the key rewards at the bottom once we've completed this. 10 dungeon loot rolls, and that's important, and that's a lot of loot that is going to be spawned on the floor, but it's all for ours for the taking. And while we're doing this, we're also going to be building up our data models from hostile neural networks for these mobs. And so I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and get these bad boys summoned in. I am kind of nervous about this. Now we can only carry 4 of these datas at any given time. So I'm going to go ahead and grab at least the skeletons. I think I also want to save for a witch in here. But I'm going to go ahead and start taking these guys out. We are timed, so we are going to have to keep that in mind as I go through and fight these guys. There we go. And that one was there. So now that wave... How did he spawn in here? Okay, I'm going to have to break through here, I guess. And take this guy out? Oh, goodness. Okay, and there's all of the mob drops. Holy smokes. That is a lot of mob drops going on here. But, oh goodness, let's get all of that through. We should be seeing the next wave come in. And there's still one other mob that I really want from this. That's the witch, which should spawn in this wave. So, there we go. I'm going to grab that. Place that in here. And... let the creepers explode. It does more damage to these mobs and will help us out overall. But goodness, there's a lot of mobs. And hopefully none of them get stuck inside. The witch is going to be the hardest thing to kill. There we go. And last but not least, that one's gone. And it says we're missing one more enemy. And yes, they apparently can spawn in here. Oddly enough. All right. So that's the other wave. We only have 2 more waves, and then we get to see the ridiculous items that are going to spawn on the ground, which I'm kind of worried about. All right, so there's that. I'm honestly, you know what? I should turn my magnet off just so we can see the sheer pileup of items that ends up down there. Okay, next wave. Let's put this in here too. Oh man, come on creepers, do your thing. There we go. Let the creepers blow up because they're not going to really do anything to us or the base, but they are going to damage these mobs, which is what it's all about. Apparently we are supposed to take modifiers, I think. And if we fail this, by the way, we get like blindness and stuff, which is really nasty. And thankfully we don't get blindness while we're actively doing this. Oh man, that armor is rough that that's wearing. Osmium armor. Okay, and... whew! I'm kind of getting worried. Alright, we'll take all of this. I'm not ready for the items that are about to pile up on the ground. That's the one thing with this mod. It is just absurd when it comes to the items that are dropped. All right, last but not least, here we have our final wave. And these are bosses. So let me get the creepers. All right. And these guys all have diamond swords. They still don't do any damage to me. So if I'm down here, notice they're not doing anything. But are we doing anything to them? Yes, we are. Get out of here, Skelly. Gonna get rid of these guys. All right, there's that. And last but not least, I'm scared. Okay. After it does this loophole, the gate will be completed and it's going to spill out all of the items from a dungeon. Oh, man. Oh, goodness. And my game crashed. Yep, that's not good. Now, after relogging, well, after changing my server forge config, which by the way, if you're ever experiencing crazy crashes, be sure to check out our Discord, as we do have some fixes inside of our tech support channel for a ton of different issues. One being if you ever have a ticking tile error, like I just experienced here, or an entity ticking error, There's ways of fixing that within Forge, so definitely check that out. I have it all pinned in that channel if you're interested. But this is what we generated from that drop. It's all dungeon loot, and I'm looking through here. Do I see any of the items I need from Botania in it? I mean, there should be. It's probably hiding in here. But let's go ahead and grab as much of it as we can. There's everything from Ars loot to all kinds of stuff piled up in here. Holy smokes, tons of Ars loot from this that I didn't even see in the list. I'm not seeing Botania stuff so far, so we might still have to tap a little bit into Botania if I didn't get it from that. So now that I know that loot pool is kind of borked at the moment, I guess I'm going to have to go about it the old-fashioned way and dive just a little bit into Botania. And when I mean a little bit, I mean just a teensy bit. To get started with Botania, we just need some floral fertilizer, and I'm going to right-click this on the ground, and that's going to grant us a few Botania flowers. And the only one we're really needing right now is the white one. But much like Pokemon, you're gonna want to collect them all, because all you need is one of the flowers, and you just need to turn it into the petal. And as soon as you make the petal, you can then place that on the ground. You're gonna see a little bit of sparkles, and this is where you can bone meal it. And this is going to turn basically one flower, which splits into two, and each one of those petals can be turned into 4 flowers. So this is a double tall, and so we now have 4 more petals. And so you can just rinse and repeat this process to continue duplicating flowers. And it looks like we don't even need bone meal. We can just shift to grow this, which is even better. Then we need to take one of those petals and make ourselves a petal apothecary. This is a super early Botania, and then we just need a bucket of water. Just one for right now, and we're going to use this to make our first seed. So we place that in the petal apothecary, and we can then use this to make a very specific functional flower. And that flower is none other than a pure daisy, the one that is on top of my head. Notice the resemblance here. Yes, they are exactly the same flower. And now that we have this, we can use this pure daisy to grow a couple of different things. Now, I recommend making more of these. So I'm probably going to go ahead with a water bucket. Let's see. Let's go ahead and make 2. That way we can have both of them running at the same time. But I'm going to show you how quickly we can accelerate this. So 4 petals, and then we use a seed to activate it. I'm going to place one over here. So what we can do is we can take logs. Any logs, doesn't really matter. I'm just going to use these for right now. I think stripped logs also work. And then stone. And we're going to need both of these things up and running right now. And so I'm going to place this surrounding the flower, and it's going to convert this. But you can accelerate this if you want using the time in the bottle, which I recommend. It does take a little bit of time. And there it goes. It has now been converted. Same thing goes for these logs. We can give it a little bit of acceleration. And before you know it, we're going to have living wood and living rock, both needed to technically make that iron. And now all I need is the mana pool, which I've just made using that living rock. And we're also going to need a mana spreader. So a very basic setup here. And the only thing after this we're missing by placing our mana pool here, our mana spreader here, is we're going to need to make a wand of the forest to be able to tell that mana spreader what to link to. Now, of course, to fit the base theme, I have to go with cyan and orange. And now we have ourselves a wand. So I can shift right click this and then hold down shift right click and then right click here, and that will link these together. So now my mana spreader is pointing at my mana pool. And then finally, for the flower that we're going to use to generate this power, we're going to use ourselves an Endoflame. It's super simple to make. All you need is 1 light gray petal, 2 brown petals, and a red one, along with some seeds, and you've made a flower that eats burnable material. And we can just place that right next to our mana spreader, and this is automatically going to know that this is linked. And if you want to see and make sure it's linked, you can always hover over this, and if it highlights the mana spreader, you know that it is linked to that one. Plus, there's a check mark next to it. So all we have to do now is simply feed this some coal. And I would recommend coal blocks, or you can use blaze. Really doesn't matter. I'm just going to toss one right down, and as soon as I do this, it should consume that coal block, and this is going to start building up with mana, and eventually we'll get ourselves our first mana burst. Now, this is not a whole lot of mana, but if we grab some iron, we'll be able to know when we have enough to make it. And as soon as we have enough mana in here, this will turn into a check mark. And we only need 2 ingots in order to make the Philosopher's Stone, which is what we're after. And yes, you can speed these up with the time in the bottle. So before you know it, you're going to have plenty of stuff in here. You can even speed these up as well. And we should, there we go, now have access to this. There's our first one. And we're only missing one more. So, oh, it's like the anticipation's killing me. I'm just trying to show you in real time. It doesn't take that long to be able to get this all going. And perfect. Now we have both. Now later on, I will be getting into Botania a bit more as we're going to need some later game stuff. Plus, there's a full dimension, by the way, that you can get access to that is very much like the overworld from the Botania add-on mod that's in here. I think we have almost all of the items. So right here's the star. There's the Botania. We need blaze rods for this thing, the Philosopher's Stone. Oh, I'm so excited to get the Philosopher's Stone. This unlocks a whole bunch of stuff, by the way, for us, and a bunch of transmutations, which is going to be very nice. But I got to keep my focus. So summoning altar, we just need Dragon's Breath, which we just got last episode, and that's all we need, I think, for the Philosopher's Stone. So pretty straightforward. I think we need TNT, and that's going to be our catalyst. And I think that's it. So how does this summoning altar work? So it's been a while since I've used it, but if I remember correctly, I think we just right click the items onto it like so. And then we put the Dragon's Breath on there. And then last but not least, we right click the catalyst and that gets it all to start. And we just crafted up our Philosopher's Stone. That is fantastic. Now, by default, I think the V key is supposed to be the key that allows you to charge up your Philosopher's Stone, but right now I don't need to worry about that too much. Things that it can do. It can convert and change blocks from one state to another, and there's a whole list of what they can do. C, by default, opens this up and makes it a portable crafting grid, and then we also have the projectile. Now, the projectile we can't really do too much with right now, but once we have ourselves I believe it's called, I have to look up ProjectE. Once we have a Klein star, then that has some EMC in it, then we can actually use those projectile transmutations, which will allow us to essentially like change mobs from one type of mob to another. Now, what this also gives us access to is getting closer to dark matter, but it also gives us access to getting those Klein stars and making a transmutation table. So at this point, we should be able to make a transmutation table. Here's the catch though, right? We can make this and we can utilize it. And there's a whole bunch of cool things we can do and start to build up EMC in our own personal bank. But there's going to be some things we have to start working on to build up dark matter. Notice this requires Eternalist fuel blocks as a catalyst and also all the modium to be able to make higher tier things. So that's something to keep in mind, right? But how do we make Eternalist fuel? Well, that's where an automation is going to come into play. Eternalist fuel in this pack does not have EMC values, so that means we're going to have to set up a Philosopher's Stone automated setup where we send charcoal into this to slowly but surely, or coal into this to slowly but surely build it up into that Eternalist fuel. But that's not a bad thing because I love automations like that. And so it's going to be pretty interesting to be able to send that to that and start to build it up over time. But okay, I know I can't keep you guys hanging here for too long. We are going to definitely make the transmutation table. We just need obsidian. It's got to happen. Okay, here we go. Transmutation table. We now have a ProjectE table and we can turn this into a tablet, which I definitely want to do. So now we have ourselves a transmutation tablet and all kinds of fun can now start to be had. Even though it's not super useful to me at the moment, this table is going to be more powerful when it's integrated into our applied energistic system. Right now, all it lets me do is basically take all of these items and immediately learn them and allow me to access them from here instead of needing to have a chest array of energy condensers. And so now I'm going to be on a learning journey for EMC, and all of the values are here. So I can just search EMC and just see everything that is currently EMCable. And it would be really nice to have all or most of these things learned. If we don't learn them all later on, there's an upgrade that we can attach to our applied energistic system, and an upgrade we can insert into one of the importers that will automatically learn things that are imported into the system. For example, I wouldn't have to manually pull out the items from our mob drops. Instead, as it gets imported into the system, it would just learn it. So like I said, tons of opportunities just were awoken by us unlocking ProjectE. The big one for me though, I'm still going to say it, is just simply for the building materials. As you can tell, I really like my building. So with that, I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hopefully you'll learn something new along the way. I'm looking forward to the episodes in the future, and if you are too, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already and give this video a huge thumbs up. By the way, let me know, do you love or do you hate ProjectE? Ooh, I would love to see the conversations down in the comment section below. And guys, it's now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks is going to go to Log2437. Thank you so much, by the way, for your amazing support by choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting in one of the best ways possible. So guys, I really do appreciate you. I thank you so very much. I'll see you in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye.